Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Having Juice with OJ with your host, Oliver. And I am here with my co-host, Germ. Say what's good, Germ.
What's up, everybody? How we doing?
And today, we have a special guest. This is the first Zoom episode of Having Juice with OJ, which is a pretty big deal. And we are here with 17-time All-American at Cal, also a USA national champion in the breaststroke record. And these will probably fall out multiple times throughout this episode. So here we are with Reece Whitley. Let's clap it up for Reece. Let's go.
Thank you guys for having me.
Of course, I appreciate you giving us a time of day because I know you probably have a packed schedule. Let's just get right into it. Obviously, I would love to start with just the very beginning. I mean, I've known you since literally kindergarten, and you were like 5 feet taller than everybody. But who was your role model growing up in the swimming realm? And just what grade did you really know that you were like, okay, I really want to take this seriously?
Yeah. So, when we first met, I wasn't in the water at all yet.
Yeah.
But, the story goes, it's summer camp at Penn Charter, which I believe you also went to.
Yep.
But, you have to pass the deep water test in order to be able to swim and go off the diving board and stuff like that. And I just wanted to be with my friends. And so I took it without really having any prior experience swimming. And you know how that goes. You fail once, and I failed again, and I failed the third time. And I was like, look, Mom, I need swim lessons. This is getting pretty old. And so after passing on the fourth attempt, I actually stayed consistent with those swim lessons. I enjoyed being in the water. It's a very out of body experience. Just kind of being able to do things from hold your breath and learn how to swim the strokes and being able to swim fluidly. I really enjoyed that. And by the time I was 12 years old, I broke, what's called a national age group record. At the time, it's like the biggest thing. And so that was obviously pretty exciting to have that at that young age. And I think that not only with the self-progression that you can see through the sport of swimming was something that really attracted me to the sport. I played basketball and baseball as well. I loved baseball, loved being on the mound. But in swimming, you get a distinct opportunity to really see, what you put in is ultimately what you get out 95% of the time. And so, I was lucky enough to have great coaching in the immediate area. And as they say, the rest is history.
That's insane. For example, you were so obviously very young high school student when you just became this inspiration for so many people. I mean, I would put you in the same conversation as what Monet Davis did for this city, and also just the people who were younger, swimming, even just other types of athletes, they all kind of looked up to you. How did that feel going into a different meet where everyone's like, oh my God, that's Reece. Oh my God, that's Reece.
Yeah, that was crazy. And, it started as probably a 10-year-old just being large. But then I actually got good. And it definitely changed the game. It's a cool part of life that I was able to experience. And, that brings a lot of great things. It brings a lot of bad things. I got to learn that at a very young age as well.
Mm-hmm.
But nonetheless, all those experiences have made me who I am today. And I would not be where I am today without the support that I had from such a young age. I think that is one thing that, and looking back on my career, that's something that I was certainly exposed to. It was, the majority of the energy on the pool deck was very positive, and I had a very supportive circle around me that I kept very small throughout my career.
Mm-hmm.
And they just kind of took me the whole way. So I had a great experience growing up as an age group swimmer, kind of in the spotlight, I guess.
Mm-hmm. And at a very young age, again, I believe you were a junior when you started doing the Olympic trials. How did that feel being with like grown men at this point? I mean, of course you were up there in height with them, but of course you still have a young mindset. How did that feel? And did you take any lessons away from certain swimmers?
Of course. That's another thing about swimming is that you're thrown uh, into the fire no matter how old you are or no matter how much experience you have. So, you can have, some age group kid who pops off and, has their day on the right day. And then they're, 16 years old on an Olympic team. That's a pretty wild way things can go. Fortunately, I did swim at the Junior World Championships in Singapore the year prior. So I definitely had a bit of, big meet exposure before Olympic trials. But, I think any swimmer will tell you that Olympic trials is the craziest meet
I feel
on the
like that has to
planet.
be so like nerve wracking. Like Jesus.
Scream
Oh
of
my
the crop right
goodness.
there.
Yeah, it's insane. And obviously now being on the older end of things, I haven't been to an Olympic Games. That's certainly a rush in and of itself. But in terms of the pressure, I don't know if it gets much bigger than U.S. trials, just because, um, you know, there are world record holders that don't make the team. There are people who, in certain events, could be top 5 in the world consistently, and they could get third or fourth at Olympic trials. So these are insane statistics when you just put it out there. You really do have to be great on that day. And being exposed to that environment, I was able to make 2 semifinals when I was 16. And so walking out and, you're on deck with the world's best. So you're back there with, the Phelpses and the Lochtys and all the young studs and the college guys and everyone in, kind of this 0.5% of swimming athletes in the U.S., are all trying to chase the same thing. And it is a pressure cooker. And I got to do it more than once, which is very cool. And it's, these are experiences that I'll take with me for the rest of my life. So,
And I have to ask, you have broken so many records. I mean, at Penn Charter, I feel like every meet when you would come back and they're like, "Yep, I broke this one." Like, whatever. Which one? Like, do you have a favorite record that just means so much to you that you have broken?
um, hmm, I think just being on the Cal record board is pretty special.
For sure.
The way the sport is moving, I don't expect my name will last there very long. But one record does stick out. I think we have our Easterns championship meet, which is like our high school it's our high school championships. It's kind of bigger than states because it's all the independent schools from New England to Virginia, and you even had schools from Florida come back up and go, and there are schools from California that come out now. It's an incredible meet in and of its own right. I think it's one of a kind. And, there was a 100 breaststroke record that I broke, I want to say my freshman or sophomore year at Penn Charter, that had been there for 25 years. And that was like, okay, like that's cool. And, Nelson Diebel
Oh, that's nothing. That's
ended up swimming at Princeton and was an Olympic champion back in his day. So, to be able to swim at a meet like that with that much history and break a record that was, twice my age at the time was pretty cool.
Yeah, so like talking about breaking his record and you're talking about being a 13, 14-year-old freshman, are those moments, did those events, create transferable, values or memories that you carried with you throughout your career? Is that something that you were able to look back on down the road and say, I was able to do this, so, this upcoming event or this upcoming meet, it's not really going to be that difficult for me?
Yeah, no, I think every new situation poses its challenges, of course. Um, but I think you learn bigger lessons through the work uh, than of like the performance in and of itself. Um, because positive or negative outcomes are just a byproduct of the moment, and that's what I've learned to treat situations as a moment, um, whether positive or negative. But ultimately, it's about you know the execution of the work that you do to get there. And in some situations, you might be super prepared, and it could go terribly, or you wake up one day and you feel like you should be in the hospital, and it ends up being like one of your best swims ever. So there are definitely some things that you can learn from positive and negative moments. But I think more of what I've gotten uh, more feedback from and more information from. I've gotten more of that from the work that I've done in the process. So
That's very relatable too, because I wrestled in high school, so I know how it is firsthand experience. The work that you put in is the results that you're gonna get out there. It's you versus yourself in most cases, and for those out there who do play a sport, maybe like swimming or wrestling or somewhere where they're out there on their own, what were some ways that you got yourself to that mindset of serenity or mindset of relentlessness before an event? What were some things that helped you, or was it knowing that you put in that work and put in all that time?
yeah, that's a great question. For me, that was music. There's always music, and there's a lot of it in the Philadelphia area. There's a lot of good music, so I was always exposed to that, and you know, uh, it just lets you be yourself. You can kind of tune out, and just have fun. I think, especially in this day and age, it probably wasn't the same way when I was a youngster, but people really like to take the fun out of what they do, or external factors like to remind you that you can have fun. But I always think music, whether using it during warm up or behind the blocks, was something that always kind of got me in the right mindset to get in there. And whether it was relaxing music like smooth jazz just to kind of tone the nerves, or like if it was a high pressure situation and I wanted to feel locked in, and I get my Meek Mill going, it's like okay, like there are moments for that too. So I just love music. So
What was like a go-to song that you think you listen to more than others? Obviously, you just said like you like to change it up a little bit, but you got that Meek Mill in there. What song really like turns you up when it's like, all right, like I'm about to snap?
you know yeah, I feel like the basic answer is dreams and nightmares,
Yeah.
right? I think it's so funny because I feel like you're just like 10 years old and you just know the lyrics to that song word for word.
Everyone in Philly
Um,
does.
yeah.
It's crazy.
But I think one that I always go to in both situations, I think that's, the versatility of a song like Blue Notes
Mm,
is insane. Like you can like
that's smooth
kick
jazz
back and
and
you can,
like
yes, that's what I'm saying. It's the perfect combo. It's the perfect combo. You can get turned up to that song. You can chill out. It's the perfect balance. So that's has to be my go-to Meek song for sure.
Nice. And besides music and Meek and smooth jazz, what's something that you would say a lot of people don't know about you that you would want them to?
Um, Honestly, that I'm pretty laid back. Like I think as I've like as I've progressed in uh, academics and athletics, I think I go see people that I haven't seen in like a year or two, or people from high school, people from early on in college, or people that may know of my name at school. Um, they expect me to be like very uptight and just kind of like drill sergeant mentality, and I definitely have that, but I don't think it's really good to live your life that way. So I do like to just relax, kick back, watch whatever is popular on Netflix,
Always
or
that
just
top
like
10.
yeah, right. So they're always pumping out content, or just getting dinner with friends. I love trying new things, eating new food, and luckily in Williamsburg, where I am right now, there's a lot of good food places
Hmm.
nearby. So now that I'm retired, I'm going to try not to indulge too much, but definitely on occasion for sure.
Enjoy that for sure.
I mean, I definitely know that I can tell everyone, and I always have told everyone who's asked about you, you have always been the most humble guy. I mean, even through all these things where, like, I'd probably be a little cocky about, like, I'd be like, all right, yeah, like, blah, 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 I'm the man. Like, but you've always been humble. And I could only imagine when you first walked into the Cal, like, swimming, like, all the meets at Cal and all that when you were a freshman, what were some things that you were thinking walking in, like the pressure's on, or was it like, I'm just gonna see how this goes?
Yeah, that's an environment that will humble anyone, uh, no matter who you are. No matter if you are the number one recruit in the country, or if you're, a guy from California who is lucky enough to, get into the school and perhaps walk on. Uh, you know, that's Cal swimming is a breeding ground for success. Everywhere you look, you have some of the smartest guys that you've ever met, and you also have some of the best athletes in the world or of all time, and you are thrown into that environment from day one, as you're a
Hmm.
freshman. And I think I chose Cal because of the amazing culture that they have. It's incredibly supportive, from present athletes, but also the alumni base as well. And so I was exposed to that as, a junior through the recruiting process, but also I got an opportunity to go to NCAAs in person my senior year in high school and watch the guys compete in a crazy environment. I think NCAAs is also a crazy pressure cooker.
Yeah, it
It's
has to be.
probably up there with trials in a lot of ways. But I think throughout my time, there was never really any pressure, because swimming is very individual, and you are responsible for certain tasks, and you're responsible for scoring points to ultimately win a national title.
Mhm.
But you can't do that by yourself. You do that with the guys around you. I think at Cal, we do a great job of understanding that everybody's individual performance was in some way impacted by the group around them, by everyone around them. I don't train with the sprint freestylers, but I can assure you that I might have said one thing, or given him a point here or a point there, that when I go watch Bjorn Seeliger or Jack Alexi, these guys who will become household names in the future, you know, I know that I might have said something to help push them forward. And I certainly know when I go out there that they've given me some things to learn as well and to benefit from. So I think just that togetherness and that brotherhood that exists at Cal is something that I don't really think exists anywhere else within the swimming world. And, there are very few places like it in all of world sport. So it was amazing. So
And this is a question that is, I really, really wanted to ask. I mean, swimming is not a minority sport. I mean, you really broke the barriers here. How did that feel, like, just knowing that you're in a sport that not a lot of people who look like you are a part of? How did that feel? And, like, did that drive you and motivate you to continue and be better and better every single day?
yeah, I think there is definitely a history of black swimming that goes unnoticed just because social media wasn't really a thing until I was kind of coming up.
Yeah.
Like the fact that Instagram came out when we were in middle school is, I think, a large factor in kind of my story being put out there at scale. But I think the impact that social media can have, I think in one way, yes, like as I got older and, people started to come to me about my story um, and as they wanted to hear more of what I was thinking and my perspective on certain aspects of life, I think that it was motivating just to be an upstanding member of society and, you know, be on top of your thoughts and have ideas and value innovation because, you know, you don't know what kid could be looking at you in this day and age. Everything is very public. And so I think that was certainly motivating just to continue to push myself so I could be the best on others. But that was more from a leadership and academic interest perspective. But I think in terms of the pool, I wanted to keep that very much so towards myself. And that was something um, that was tough to balance throughout my career because, you know, as you let other people's expectations enter your head, that's when things can kind of go downhill. And I've definitely succumbed to that at certain points in my career. But it's hard because you're so young and you don't know anything, and there's a lot coming at you. So I don't necessarily regret any of those times. It certainly taught me great lessons, but I think, to kind of wrap that thought, I think, the swimming performance was always for Reece or for Cal, but some of the other stuff in terms of outreach was definitely helpful to have a bit of motivation from being able to see kids smile when, you talk to them or you teach them how to swim or, you get parents that come up to you, 3 years after meeting them once and they just talk about what they did for you in a 5-minute conversation. It's like those are pretty impactful things that not too many people get to experience at my age. And so I just wanted to be responsible with that kind of influence. And so that's what I've tried to maintain is just to be is just responsible, I think, in short. So
For sure. And I believe it was like 2 years into you being at Cal that COVID happened. COVID happened. How did that affect your lifestyle and like your ability to train and all these things? Because I know also California was definitely very strict when it came to COVID.
yeah.
So how did that affect you and your whole team?
Well, yeah, COVID was insane. It'll for our generation, it'll always be like the where were you when?
Yeah.
So I was on my couch. we were about we were actually a week and a half out of nationals, and I think in all the teams that I've been on, and we'll probably talk about the national championships later in the pod, but I think the team that was put together in 2020 was the best team that I had swam on ever. I think it was possibly one of the best college swim teams, by roster ever. It was an incredible group. We had amazing guys that were all swimming very fast at the time. And so it was a real bummer to kind of not have that opportunity. But I just remember sitting there with my roommate and, they're walking the players off the court on the NBA, like on NBA Wednesday or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like, geez, like,
Like this is what
like what is happening,
This is what it is.
man?
This is happening. It's a plague. We have a plague.
Like, what is happening? Like, are they seriously walking these guys off the court right now? Like, is it really that serious? And a week later, everything settled in, and it was like, yeah, this is pretty serious. And so, Our situation, as you said, Berkeley was the first city. Alameda County was the first county in the country to have a shelter-in-place order. And that was right there in Berkeley, so I was in the center of it.
You were in the
So
hub.
yes, very much so. And so just being tucked in very early, we didn't really know what was going on, but um, we only had about 2 weeks break, and we didn't know if the Olympics were happening. NCAA's obviously ended up getting canceled, so um, we happened to have one of our older guys at the time, Nathan Adrian, one of the best sprinters in American history, who is a Cal alum and was working on his fourth Olympic team at the time. He actually owns a pool over in San Rafael, which is a town about 35 minutes away. And so we had a group that was more or less asked to stay to kind of ride this situation out as long as possible. And there were 5 undergrads, and I was one of them, and there were 5 pros as well. And so, we would carpool over to San Rafael, every day. And these are workouts that will stick with me for the rest of my life because they were not only mentally challenging, but they were some of the hardest physical workouts that I had experienced at the time. Because we didn't know whether we had to try to make this Olympic team or not, and everything from when I had stepped foot on campus was directed towards being the best you can possibly be in June/July of 2020. And so, while the rest of the world was kind of shut down, there was this little pocket of Cal swimmers that was getting their butts kicked every day, and so we pushed for a long time, and ultimately not stopping until Olympic trials, 15 months later. So
it's a long training session.
Yeah. I mean, that's the longest training block I had ever had, especially when you add into the fact that it wasn't like time started there. Like when I got to Cal is when we started training for the games. And we started locking in for trials. So it kind of felt like it was a very long time. I'll put it that way. But through all of that and through all of quarantine and trying to figure out where to work out and which guys you could hang out with, which guys you couldn't, like that was an insane process. And quite frankly, I think our team handled it as best as we could have, given the fact that the city of Berkeley was so strict the entire time and didn't really recognize that we were trying to do what we were trying to do. So going through that challenge with them was, again, it only made our brotherhood tighter. And I definitely think our culture is better because of it. So
100%.
Yeah, and is that something, is that culture and that brotherhood something that really stood out to you coming out of the quarantine and preparing for future seasons, or is there something else that really stuck with you outside of those, couple of months or those 15 months training?
Yeah, I think, not only COVID itself, but you had George Floyd come up as well. And I feel like that was another point in my career where I took on a bit more responsibility, just from being a voice within the swimming community for Black men and for Black people, and being young and successful in this sport. I felt that, it's not like I felt like I needed to speak, but a lot of people did ask me. And just to not have these thoughts like going in my head 24/7, I decided to speak and when asked. And so my team was very supportive. We do have a very diverse team. We have one of the most diverse teams in the NCAA. We have about a third to half of the team. It kind of fluctuates by year, are foreign born. We have guys from all over the world. We have Black kids that are half Asian, Pacific Islander. We have, again, kids from all across the world on top of that. And so being in that environment and having the support of the athletic administration in that part of COVID was certainly impactful as well. It was like, my dad and the recruiting process would always ask me, where would you want to be in a crisis? And me being like the 17, 18-year-old that I was at the time is like, oh, I'm not going to get in a crisis. Like, what could go wrong?
Nothing, right? At 17, 18 years old, you had no worries. Didn't even know how to do taxes yet. So we had really nothing going on.
And then we have two generational, just massive, massive situations. COVID on one hand, but then you have the first kind of social media influenced, rights uprising in terms of people just speaking on very heavy topics. And you had two of those start within 3 months of each other. It's like, geez, like I think kids need a break. Kids need a bit of a break. So it's like, oh man. But after all of that, it was very quickly learned on me that I was in the right environment the entire time. And I'll back that. I'll defend that against anything.
So, with that, speaking on, the diversity and speaking on George Floyd and, how that created an uprising within yourself, can you talk a little bit about Team Black, your involvement as a council member? What are some of the goals that you wanted to see accomplished?
Yeah, I think, the Black Leadership in Aquatics Coalition was great. It was a great thing to be a part of. You just had generations of Black swimmers, both Olympians, non-Olympians, national teamers, who just felt responsible to come forward as a smaller group and speak on behalf of who we represented and of which groups of people across the country look to in terms of a voice for Black swimming and diversity in swimming. And so very quickly, USA Swimming was kind of like, hey, we're gonna meet you where you want to meet us, right? And we're gonna sit at the table and we're gonna discuss, these issues at a high level, but then, down the line, discuss what USA Swimming can do as, a national governing body of 500,000 members. And, everybody knows at least one swimmer. And to be a swimmer in the U.S., you have to go through USA Swimming. And so it's like, how can we create this organization, or how can we make this organization a champion of inclusion? And so to be 20 years old and sitting at the table was incredible. Tim Hinchy, who is the current CEO of USA Swimming, is a great friend of mine now, and his leadership was very impactful through that time and many other situations as well. But Tim is a thought leader when it comes to leading a national governing body, and so to have him so supportive in that endeavor, and the USA Swimming diversity task forces that were willing to work with us and spread positivity and promote initiatives regarding, putting financial capital, sponsoring events, and, so many other things to promote, Black swimming, but, swimming in minority communities and inner city communities moving forward. It was a great experience. And, as I get older, it's something that I definitely want to come back to, but I was a full-time student athlete. And so unfortunately that kind of experience for me was short-lived, but I know the group is still doing great things, and USA Swimming is certainly has a plan, not just a year plan, not just a 4-year plan, but one that extends far beyond, that'll ultimately, I think, equitize or work to equitize the sport much more down the line. So I'm really excited for what they have in store.
100%. And I mean, I've always had this question. I've asked a lot of athletes about it. I mean, in my first podcast, I asked Joey and Mike Siani about it. Also, like just NIL. I mean, that thing really changed the game for athletes. I mean, both high school and college. How do you think that that really affected, like, one, like the actual person who's getting the deal, but also just as a whole?
Yeah, no, I think, look, I benefited from NIL. It was one of the primary reasons why I came back for my fifth year. The opportunity for college student athletes to be able to profit off of the work that they put in is it's a beautiful thing. And it was necessary. It was long overdue. You think of
100%.
guys like Reggie Bush, who probably could have established generational wealth at the age of 18, 19, 20 years old. And I think there are pros and cons to everything, right? Because then I think for me, I just want to see the focus still be placed on performance. That's all that I want to see.
Yeah.
But it gets to be this game of like, how much money can I make? And that's a legitimate question to ask for oneself. But I think if that's the sole goal over top of performance, that's where I'm like, okay, like cool. That's for you. But I think for me, and for at least what I want to see from Cal men's swimming, I think people should be paid off of excellence and not necessarily like, taking a picture and, you look good. And it's like, I always wanted to be backed by what stood out on paper, what stood out on my resume, as opposed to just kind of, taking advantage of trends, which is a great thing. It's something that I wish I knew how to do. And I did to a certain extent, but you see these TikTokers and influencers just absolutely blowing up. And
Oh yeah.
it's amazing. It's absolutely amazing to see, but I just want the focus to still be on performance down the line. So
100%. And I mean, I'm surprised that you're not one of those people, dancing in the TikToks and such like that. Because I mean, at the school dances, always dancing. So I was surprised to see you weren't out there at the TikToks.
Nah, man, that was always Janari and Adam. That was always those two boys, my boys for life. But
Oh yeah, shout out them. Adam was on the pod before.
Yeah, no, I mean those guys are the most charismatic dudes that I know. So in terms of the guys that would have done best on TikTok, I think it would have been them. I think I'm too uncoordinated to hit all those moves. So.
And to move on to your 3 NCAA champions at Cal, championships at Cal, how did that first one feel? And then after getting that one, did you feel like, hey, I got this one notch under my belt, like let's do this again? Or like, was it a surprise that you guys got back there?
No, it definitely was not a surprise. The first one, I'll tell you about the first one. It's just like, I was obviously good coming out of high school. Fortunately, was able to make 2 championship finals my freshman year, which I didn't have to do. The team certainly could have won the meet without me. But, I walked on to a team that was already pretty stacked. And so, our chief rival at the time and kind of for the past 15, 20 years has been the University of Texas. And so that year, NCAA's was in Austin, Texas. They have an amazing facility down there at UT. And so it's always a hostile environment when your national championships are in, your main competitor's home pool.
Yeah,
and so all their alumni come out, all their students come out. You don't typically, normal people or like the public doesn't really associate swimming with like a lot of tension. But I tell you, the men's NCAA swimming championships is pretty it's pretty intense. And so to go in there and win the meet by 85 points was a
Smoked them.
dream.
Absolutely
And
smoked
yeah,
them.
no, I mean, I don't like to get into that too much, but you know, if we're talking freely, like kinda. So
100%.
and, and so that's probably the equivalent of like a 30 piece or like a 40 piece, like in basketball. Like it was significant.
Sheesh.
And so you go in there, and from day one we were just so locked in. And we walked in there like we owned the place. And we came out on top. And I think walking away from that meet as a 19-year-old who had scored and who had been in an A final and ultimately helped his team to win, I was like, I want as many of those as I can. So I'm kind of over it. Like, 2 weeks later, you get your partying in or whatever, and it's back to reality. But I was every single year, I was like, okay, how can we do this again? Because that was pretty fun.
That is amazing.
And and that's obviously great that you were able to go in there as a 19-year-old and contribute on such a high level. Now, did that also create, on the other hand, an expectation within the team that you guys had to continue competing at this top-notch level to continue winning these titles?
Yeah, well, I think if success is what you want, you got to be able to work. You there. That's not really something you can just kind of fake. You can't. You can maybe fake it one year here and there, but if you want to win consistently, you have to make winning a habit, and that's just in your day-to-day approach to working out, to taking care of your body, taking care of academics. We are strong believers in taking care of all aspects of your life at Cal. And if every team looks different, every season is different. But if you can kind of keep your core values where they are, you're going to be in a position to where you can win. And then ultimately, it's about executing on the work that you did for, however many months beforehand. And NCAA is supposed to be fun. It's supposed to be, you're supposed to swim free. And so, fortunately, I had the best coach in the world who could put all of this together every year, almost without any flaws. And, his leadership, I'm talking about Dave Durden. Dave is like, call me biased, but he is the best in the world at what he does. And so being able to go in there with the confidence that, yes, like everybody on this roster, from coach to the NCAA team to the guys that only go to conference to the guys that don't even go to conference, everybody knows the work that they've put in, and everybody knows that they know what to do when the opportunity presents itself to go execute. And no matter if they, win an individual national title or they're scoring points in the B final, that they're all pushing together, the collective. They're pushing Cal men's swimming. They're pushing the alumni forward into trying to achieve something beautiful. That's the kind of those are the kind of thoughts that I think really help you not only recenter after you win something like that, but really get motivated to do it again. And I was very fortunate to have three. There are great teams that there are great swimmers that go through their college career without even winning one. And so I'm just very humbled by the opportunity to be around such great guys and contribute here and there, and obviously have the opportunity to speak about it, like with you guys today. So,
And how did you manage your work-life balance in terms of yeah, I'm training this hard this day, but you need some time for yourself sometimes too. How did you manage
yeah.
that?
That's a good question.
Mm-hmm.
It is hard. It's
Mm-hmm.
hard to, you know, you kind of live and die by the culture.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if you want to be successful at anything, you kind of have to do that to a certain extent.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to do it right and you have to do it with balance.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think, one of the things that made it really easy on me was that, you know, it's like swimming is a great just feeling. It's a great feeling. So like when, you have your recovery days and you're chilling out, you have a workout and you feel great. And, it's Berkeley, California, and it's like
Beautiful.
70 and there's not a cloud in the sky in October. And you're like, okay, like this is great.
I think that's a little bit different than Philly.
Yeah.
Tad bit
So
different.
so you just kind of have to I think a key to balancing everything is appreciating where you are.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't appreciate where you are, you can get very stuck. And I think that's one of the lessons that has applied to life for me because, I'm about to go into a very work heavy career where, a lot of uh, the emphasis on culture and putting your head down and putting in long hours, they hold true in this line of work as well. And so it's like, how do you balance it all? It's like you have to be lucky for the opportunity to just wake up every day and do what you chose to do. You can't try to choose your wins in life. You have to choose the struggles. That's something that we emphasize at Cal, and some conversations with guys and my close friends. That's something that we try to remind ourselves. It's just like, look, like you chose this life, and for better or for worse, you might have done well at it in some moments, and that's not how it's going to be all the time. But you can't focus on the highs. You have to focus on trying to mitigate the lows. And when you're in the lows, embracing it, embrace the grind. Like, you know you're here because you work, and you work well, and you work hard. And so, you know why would you stop there if you're working hard? Like, that's what you love to do. So, you know pull the sleeves up and get to it. So
I love that mentality. I mean, Reece Whitley now, I mean, you just retired. I think it was about a week ago you announced your retirement of swimming. Uh, why do you think that you decided to hang it up like so early in your career? And like, how does it feel right now going into a work world where it's like, wow, I mean, I was just swimming the other day. Like,
yeah. Yeah. Well, I think you got to be able to realize that you went to school too.
mm-hmm,
I was fortunate enough to get into the business school at Cal, which is again another program that has history far beyond me ever being there.
mm-hmm,
There are pages and pages of successful leaders, successful innovators that come out of the Haas School of Business, and so to be able to have that opportunity to study there on a daily basis and compete in that environment as well was very special. And so, swimming is obvious, and athletics in general, is something that you put your life's work into, and you put so much time and effort and energy, and it is very much so a part of who you are. But I think it's also important to constantly assess what the next 4 to 5 years look like and what you want them to look like.
mm-hmm.
And so for me, yes, like, people ask, like, could you have gone through 2024? Could you have pushed forward? It's like, yeah, yes, like I could have.
Mm-hmm.
But, deep down, I've always had an urge just to pursue a profession.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, these things typically do have start dates. I didn't make an Olympic team when I was 16. I didn't make it in 2021. And so these are things that, yes, if they had happened, that, yes, might have been more of a push to be like, okay, like you can, like, it's going to be good. Like, you're going to make the team. If I had made Worlds, if I had been doing well at Worlds, which are, again, very very high goals, but that is just the nature of our sport. You know, if you want to be, you can be a professional swimmer and like travel and like do the thing, but you know, at Cal, we have guys that are on the medal podium every summer. And so if you're not one of those guys, then you need to reassess at some point. That real life will start. And so for me, I wanted to take that opportunity now as opposed to waiting. You know, I was lucky enough to come up on a great opportunity in investment banking that I think will be a great experience, intellectually stimulating for sure. And you know, when I decided to hang it up, it was like you have to be grateful for so much that you've been able to do. You have to be grateful that you even had the opportunity to compete. You know, you need to be lucky that, you know, you didn't get chronically injured throughout the way. You need to be lucky that you were able to execute and, you know, study at a place like Cal. And after a certain point, I think all athletes have to make the tough decision. It's like, look, like, you got to get things rolling, and if you want certain things for yourself, you have to act on them. So that's you know, kind of what the decision was. So
Talking about injuries, did you ever go through injury stint, or like, I know, especially for me and maybe even for you, injuries, it feels like once you get the bug, it's like, it feels like it happens every other day. Did you ever go through something like that, and how did you persevere through that?
yeah, so yeah, people actually don't really know this either, but because you know, we
Exclusive.
don't
This is
really
an
spend.
exclusive.
Yeah, but I mean, because we don't really focus on the negatives at
Yeah.
Cal, right? Like, you know, you get your injuries and you do what you can with them, but probably since I was about 17, I just, you know, my groin would just like blow up. You know, I have these very big, you know, muscular features, and breaststroke is a very violent stroke. You know, you're constantly putting pressure on your groin, and you're kicking and you're kicking and you're kicking hundreds of, you know, many hundreds of times in a workout every single day. And that comes with wear and tear, for sure. And as you try to get bigger and stronger and more explosive, you can tweak things pretty drastically. And so uh, I actually have tweaked my groin in the middle of many swims before, and I've had to swim on them to be able to finish. And that's
That's pain. Ooh.
as you can imagine, swimming on a strained groin to any degree is pretty brutal, and it can set you back. And so those were things that I certainly had to deal with throughout my career and work to mitigate those. I've gotten very conscious of my body and mobility and the whole bit. You know, that's something that we could also talk about for another hour. But I think, you know, these are important things to go through, because in life, some things are going to happen. You know, you might be in the middle of an NCAA final, you got Olympians on both sides of you, you're in the most important race of your season, and oh yeah, like your groin is also going to feel like it's popping halfway through the race, and no, like you have too much pride to get out in the middle of the swim like you're going to finish on it. It's like these are things, and you're also feeling all this pain in the middle of the swim, like your adrenaline is rolling, you are in, you know, you're in this out of body state, and it feels like everything's going to go wrong, but you ultimately get through, and you know, you might do better than you think you would have. It's like, yes, like I wish I was healthy, like yes, I wish, you know, I could have done it, and I wish I could have gone faster. But I think you're always going to have these urges, like you're always going to want more. And so I think you just have to, again, just be grateful. Just be grateful I didn't need surgery. Be grateful it didn't end my career. I got to end it on my own terms. Stuff like that. So I think focusing on those positives is certainly key to being able to deal with stuff like that. So
That is interesting, because a lot of like, you see these MJs and these players who usually like they stay in the game a little bit too long, where they kind of start falling off, And I mean, that's interesting that now you have that peace of mind where you're like, hey, this is because it's my decision. I got to post and feel great about it and like be grateful for the opportunities that are to come and that also have happened.
Yes,
I do like that.
of course.
Well, Reece, we're going to wrap this up. I mean, thank you so much for coming on here. I know you're a busy man. He's in Manhattan now, guys. Go find him in Manhattan somewhere. You'll definitely be able to find him on the street. But again, thank you so much. I mean, this was great being able to talk to you, and I feel like I got to experience more of your life after only like haven't seen you in a while. So, I mean, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Hey,
Yeah,
thank you guys for having me on. I appreciate you giving me the time. So,
of course. Well, we'll let you go. And thank you so much. I'll talk to you later. And hey, guys, like, subscribe, comment, and give Reece a follow on Instagram too. All right, guys. Peace. Thank you, Reece.
See you guys.
Gamble with your life. If you didn't know.